Hi, I'm Trevor Conquergood from Sunset Stitches. Welcome to the Quickstart Guide for Artistic Crystal Software. What my plan is for this DVD video guide is to start with this quick start and try and show you as many of the different features as possible so that you can quickly begin using the software. After the quick start guide, I'm also going to include several smaller, more specific videos that will deal with the different tools and features of the software in more detail. So what we'll do is we'll just get started with the quick start guide, and I'd like to kind of go over some of the most general principles and procedures of using the software, and we'll explore the workspace and all of the different tools and features that are found on the workspace. So the first thing I'd like to do in the quick start guide is just to overview the workspace and maybe just a brief description of all the different tools and features that are found on the actual desktop workspace. So what we can see, if you look at the top, you've got some drop-down menus, and most of the options that are found underneath these drop-down menus will also have tools on the toolbars, but we'll be coming back and reviewing the different view menus and tool menus as well. Now below your drop-down menus you have your sort of main toolbar, which has got a lot of the standard things that you find in most programs like New, Open, Save, Print. You've got Copy and Paste, you've got Undo and Redo. Now these are things that are specific to the embroidery software, like selecting your fabric, editing your color palette, managing your embroidery hoop options. And you can see here that I'm currently zoomed in or magnifying on my design at 100%, and this would be one way you could increase the zoom factor of your design. These are some tools that are used for, I guess, combining shapes, weld, trim, intersect, and this tool here is actually really helpful when you're first learning. This is the help button, and notice it's got a little question mark over top of it, and what that means is, just as an example, if I choose this tool by clicking on it, you can see now that my mouse actually has a little question mark over top of it. And just as an example, if I came over to my left-hand toolbar here, and if I click on one of the tools in the toolbar, so I'll go ahead and click on the rectangle selection tool, you'll see that it actually opens up, and I'll just bring that into our view here, the help file, and it specifically brings up the help file with information about the tool that I selected. So that can make it very easy for you to find out more information about a tool or a toolbar. So that's the help tool here, and that's going to be something that you'll use especially when you're first starting out. Now beside that, I have some alignment tools, and I'll review those again at a later time, how to use those to align multiple objects. And here you've got basically the ability to switch between draw mode and stitch mode. Over on the left, you have a toolbar that's used for selecting and editing and creating embroidery objects. And so I'll just go ahead and describe the different tools on the toolbar. We've got a selection tool, and right now I'd just like to slow down and point out, if you look at this tool closely, you'll see that there's a small triangle right there in the bottom left-hand or bottom right-hand corner of this tool. And whenever you see that small triangle, it means that there's more tool options. And what I have to do is click on the tool and hold my mouse, and it will fly open and show me that I have a rectangle selection tool, and I also have a lasso selection tool. So you can choose between the different tools, and I guess we have a flyout on the zoom tool as well. And a few of the other tools have that same option of you click and hold to see the options under that particular tool. So like I said, the first tool is my selection tool, and it's either rectangle selection or lasso selection. Next I have my edit shape nodes tool, and below that I have a zooming tool. Then we have a measurement, like a ruler. This is slow redraw, to be able to, I guess, watch your design stitch on your screen. And here we have a creation toolbar, and if I fly this open, you'll see that we've got create freehand, create Bezier, create outline, and create single crystal. So those are different tool options that are available for this freehand drawing tool. Here we've got create shape tool, and if I fly this one open, you can see that we've got a circle or ellipse, we've got the pie shape, square and rectangle, parallel, trapezoid, polygon shape, and we have a star shape. So those are tools that you can use to easily create a shape. Below that, I have a text tool for creating and editing text. And slightly below that, we've got the rectangular and circular array tool. And again, there's a flyout there that I can choose between the circular or rectangular array. This is an automatic border tool, auto border. And the final tool on this toolbar is the automatic sequence control. So those are all things that I'll be talking about in more detail. Now, also on the workspace, what you might see is a tool options toolbar, an object properties toolbar, and a color palette toolbar. You'll notice, for example, on the tool options toolbar, well, right now it's empty. That's because I don't have anything, I haven't selected and created anything yet. If I was to go ahead and select my create ellipse tool and then draw myself an ellipse, you would see that under the tool options, I should have the different tool options for this ellipse. And so this is my ability to control the XY coordinates. So from the center of my hoop, what's the location of this ellipse that I've created, the width and the height. I could change the size of it by changing these numbers. I can change the size by a percentage. It's currently checked to keep it proportional. In other words, if I make this, let's just say 80%, so it will be smaller, it's going to reduce them both X and Y by 80% because proportional is checked off. And I'll just hit my Enter key to reduce this by 80%. And you'll see that it got smaller, but it got smaller both on the X and Y axis. Now, if you uncheck proportional, you could make them smaller. So maybe I'll make it smaller again by 80%. But this time, it's only going to make the scale, the X, sort of the width, be smaller and not the height. So I'll hit Enter. And you can see that it squished it in width, but kept its height in sort of the same size as it had previously been. So that's proportional. This is a button to duplicate the object, and I'll show you more about creating, and how to duplicate or copy objects. You could mirror image the object, mirror X, mirror Y, and I could rotate this object, and I could change its outline or the width or the size of its outline. So you'll notice that the tool options will change depending on the tool that you use. So in general, that's what tool options are all about. Now, for example, I created this little ellipse or this oval shape, and if I was to just point out down at the bottom on my color palette, we can see here that this object is set to have a light blue fill and a dark blue outline. Now, I'm going to zoom in on the tool a little bit to show how that looks. Now, I'm going to select it again, so I'm going to choose my rectangle selection tool. And notice if I just click on the shape, it becomes selected. So this is my color palette, all the colors that I can choose from, and there's a little triangle here. I can, expand the list. There's many color choices. And I'll show you later on in the video how you can customize these choices to be something specific that you might want, for your brand of thread. But notice down at the bottom here, this is where I can see that I have two different things. For every object, I can have either a fill and an outline. And so, for example, right now my outline is set in dark blue, and you can see that on my object. If I click off, you can easily see it has a dark blue outline. The fill is set as light blue, but if we take a look over here on the right, these are the object properties. And so this object is set. Notice that there's a pen or an outline tab, and there's a different tab for the fill. And so this is where you choose the style of stitching that's going to fill in your areas. Now, with Artistic Crystal, we have a slightly reduced set of options from the full Artistic Suite software. So in here we have obviously the ability to fill with crystals, to use an array fill, to use a net fill, and to use an applique fill. And I'll show you also later on in a segment of this video some of the different options that become available to you with the full version of Artistic Suite, where you'll have different styles of weave fill to choose from as well. So basically, for example, if I go back over to my pen tab, right now you can see that it's set for a running stitch outline around this shape. And I could choose to change that to be a crystal outline, or a serial satin stitch outline, or an array. For example, I'll go ahead and just change it to be a satin serial. So just by clicking on that, I was able to change from what was a run stitch outline to a satin stitch outline. Now, if I didn't want any outline, I could come and click on none. Another way to change the outline of an object would be to come down here on your palette. So if I select the object, and while I have this object selected, I could choose to have no outline. So this option here is to say none. So for example, if I left click on the top side of the square, on the top left, I'll set my pen or my outline to be none. And yet I still have my fill set as in the light blue. Now, again, there's no actual fill in this yet, so if I go to the Fill tab in my Object Properties, I would need to choose a fill. So for example, why don't I go ahead and choose a crystal fill? And it will automatically fill in my shape with crystals. Now, it's not a very large oval, so it doesn't hold a lot of crystals. And we'll be talking in more detail about applying crystals and applique, net fill, and array to an object shape such as this, and how you can use all of the different styles of filling in the crystals, whether it be circular or rectangular or shape fit. There's many different ways that you can fill in a shape with crystals. But in very general terms, this is how it works. I just zoomed out, choose a tool. It could be, for example, the freehand shape tool. Draw a shape. When you're done with that shape, you can choose the style of outline. So for example, if I wanted this to have a red satin serial outline, while I have the object selected, I would come down to my color palette and I would left click over top of the red on the top left. And that changes my outline to be the color red. And then I would come over to my Object Properties and choose Satin Serial. So you can start to see the progress of the workflow of creating embroidery. And so we'll go through and look at all the different sort of details. Now, a couple other things that I'd like to kind of mention when you talk about using the exploring or learning about what's on our workspace. So this is the Tool Options toolbar. And over on the right, I have my Object Properties toolbar. And down at the bottom, I have my Color Palette toolbar. Now, all three of those toolbars have a small push pin, and I'll zoom right in on this one for the tool options over here on the right. You can see here that there's a small little pin and there's an X. Now the X will close the toolbar altogether, so I could do that right now, and you notice it just goes away. It gives you more space to work with in the middle, but of course you may want to see that toolbar again. Now I can access the tool if I come under the Tools drop down menu. The View drop-down menu, and at the bottom it says Toolbars, and we can see here that my tool options has been turned off, and I can simply click on it again and it brings it back. Now another option for, I guess, minimizing the amount of space that some of these toolbars takes would be to use the little push pin. So again, we'll just take a close look at that. So notice here the little push pin, if I click on it, what it did was it rolls the toolbar up, and notice it says Tool Options right here. If I mouse over it, the toolbar rolls out, shows me all of the options, and if I click or mouse off of it, it just rolls back up and hides again. So it's one way that you can, I guess, minimize the amount of space that your toolbars are going to occupy. Now, If you decide that you would like to have the toolbars on, and perhaps you have a nice large desktop with lots of space, you don't mind having your toolbars left on all the time, then you can return to that little push pin, click it again, and it will stick the toolbar to be open on your workspace. Now you can also make your toolbars floating if you prefer. So just as an example here on my digitizing and editing toolbar, notice the little dotted line at the top of it, and when I mouse over that dotted line I get sort of a multi-directional arrow. I'm going to click now and I'm going to drag, and it's going to pull that toolbar off of the left, and I can now make it be a floating toolbar. And so that's one way that you can customize your workspace. Now if I want to put it back, I need to click on the center of the toolbar, or I guess on the top line of the toolbar, and move it back over top of the area where it was, and it just sort of pops back on. So see, I can pull it off and then put it back on the workspace. So it's the same for all of these toolbars. You get to decide where you want your toolbars to appear. Now, another thing that you can do to customize the workspace is just, for example, with your tool options. So I showed you, for example, that I could I'll roll up the object properties so that it kind of minimizes. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'll take my tool options, click on the word tool options, and pull that tool options down, and notice what I get. I can leave it floating as it is now, or I could, when I click on it, I get these little arrows, little windows. Now, for example, I guess if I put my mouse over top of the one at the top, see what it does is highlights an area at the top of the workspace where I could then put that toolbar back. Pull it off, bring it over to the right, and see, now I could actually choose to have that tool options be on the right hand side, and it's quite large. So if I wanted to make it smaller, see, if I put my mouse right over the edge of that window or that space, I can reduce the amount of space by just clicking and dragging. And if I was to click the push pin now, I end up with two toolbars that are both docked, the Object Properties toolbar or the Tool Options toolbar. So you can see that there's many different ways that you can customize your workspace, and really it becomes entirely up to you as to how you'd like to see them appear. So I'm going to go ahead and just put them back to the default locations for right now. So I'm going to take my tool options off of my right. Let's see if I can get that. I'll just close it. It'll be easier that way. I'll take Object Properties and stick it back open again. And I'll come back to my View menu, Toolbars, turn on the Tool Options. And it's here on the right still, so I'm just going to take it off and then I'll put it back up on top. So you can see that you have that ability to move the toolbars and put them exactly where you'd like them to be. So okay, that's a small orientation of the workspace. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to prepare myself to come back and start from creating a new design. Okay, we're going to continue on with the Quickstart guide, and a couple things that I failed to review in the last segment about sort of exploring our workspace, and that's, first of all, we have a sequence manager, which you can see here. I can actually move that around to be anywhere on my workspace that I want to, and the sequence manager is showing me, I guess, at a bird's eye glance, the design that we've created so far. So basically I had created two objects in the previous segment. One of them is just got a satin stitch outline around it, and the other one has no outline, and it's a shape that's got some crystals filled in. And you can see those here in the Sequence Manager, and we'll be talking a little bit later on about how you can use the automatic sequence control to control the sewing order of your designs, and how the Sequence Manager view here is going to be your tool to do that with. And when you're, I guess, not using it, you can, for example, use this little arrow here to kind of hide the sequence tool. So it leaves the toolbar sitting there, but it hides the view of it so that it's not in your way or distracting. And if you want to view the contents, then you can simply open it up there. So I'll talk more about the sequence view a little bit later on in the video. So what I thought we could maybe do is to go ahead and start with creating a new design. So, I guess one more thing. Sorry to jump around like that. I meant to show that the design that I've opened is shown here in this small tab. There's a toolbar along here. And this toolbar, this is going to tell us we have a design. It hasn't been saved. It's simply called Untitled. And that will remain there. So even after I create another new design, we'll still be able to access the design we're working on. In other words, you can have multiple designs open at the same time. One other thing that I didn't highlight that I should also is the very bottom of your workspace. You have an information bar. It tells us things like this design has 2 items, the size, width, and height, the number of colors in the design, and the estimated number of stitches. Now that's an estimated number of stitches because you don't get your exact number of stitches until you actually save it into the specific embroidery format of your choice. And we'll talk more about embroidery formats and formats in general for the artistic crystal software here in the creative drawings component. So if I, for example, said File and New, a little window comes up, kind of an interface. And the very first choice is, what kind of fabric will you be embroidering on? And this is actually a fairly important step because the fabric that you choose will have influence over the type of stitching that gets created. It will change things like the type of underlay and the type of compensation that the embroidery software is going to make for things that are stretchy or for fabric that's very thick and heavy. And so you actually have, if I just scroll up here, and I'll just minimize this, you have several sets of choices. Embroidery smooth, embroidery ultralight, embroidery light, embroidery normal light, embroidery normal, and embroidery heavy. And you'll see that underneath each one of these choices there will be several different types of fabric that you could select. And so I'll just go ahead and perhaps do create a design and base it on something from this embroidery smooth choice. So I guess it really doesn't matter other than you want to try and choose something that's specific to what you're going to be sewing on. So I guess if I knew that I was going to be sewing on something like linen, I could choose linen, and you can see there's different choices here. And as we learn more about the software and see these different stitching results, you'll be able to learn exactly what types of things happen. But the idea is the software is going to do that type of work for us. And we simply need to say, okay, I'm going to be sewing on cotton fabric, and so we'll choose cotton, and it's, what kind of color is it going to be, pink or beige or whatever. And then when you say next, so you select your fabric and choose next. And the next window that comes up asks about the source of the artwork or creating the design. And you have several choices. The first choice says from a file, and this will actually allow us to, if I click on this button here, it would give us the ability to select from clip art that's come with the software. And now I'm not going to go ahead and do that just yet because I want to highlight all of the options. We have from embroidery, so if you'd like to start with an embroidery design and then have that converted into a nice crystal design, that can be done. You could get an image from your scanner or from your webcam if that's what you like. And you can also just start a new sort of blank graphic. And I'll start with that as the simplest way. So we'll choose a new blank graphic. And you can choose an embroidery hoop. Now if I click on this list, you'll see that there's several hoops available, starting out with a number of the different Janome hoops for the different brands of Janome machines, whether it be the SQ hoop for your MC11000 or the A hoop for your Janome 10000 or 350E. So many of the different machines have different hoops in here, and not just Janome machines. We have other brands of machines as well, whether that be Tajima or the other sort of brands of embroidery machines. And so you really have a large list of hoop sizes that you could choose. So we'll go ahead and just select a hoop, so I don't think it really matters. I'll choose the SQ hoop, and we'll say new graphic and say finish. So that is the process of starting a design. And so you could see now, if I zoom out, that we've got our pink workspace that's based on the fabric cotton. And we have, there's my embroidery hoop, and I can see the area that I can work within to fill in my hoop. And so we would be ready to create some embroidery. Now, because I just chose to have a design based on no graphic, then it's entirely up to me to create the graphic. So I would need to use the tools to either create some lettering or create some shapes and fill those shapes in with thread. So why don't I go ahead and do that? We'll click on the shape tool and choose the star shape. And notice right away in my tool options now that I get the number of rays, the starting angle, and the ray size. Those are things that I can choose. I can change them now before I draw the shape, or I can change them after. So just as an example, I'm going to click and drag, and you see that I'm getting a star, and you can see that my star has the number of rays 6. And now I haven't let go yet, and so you can see also that as I bring it, I can create any size of a star by just clicking and dragging, and I can create any sort of shape of my star, whether it be sort of tall and skinny or short and fat. Anyway, when you create a star that you're happy with, you let go. And by letting go, and I'll just zoom in here, by letting go, you can see that that finishes creating that star shape. And now if I click on, for example, my selection tool, the tool becomes available, and all of the tool options for this tool or for this item, this object, become available. So like I showed you before, I could change, this is the XY coordinate. In other words, where, if this is the center of my hoop right here, where is this shape in relationship to the center? And if I wanted to, I could click and drag and move it to a new location, and it would just, that would change the location in the tool options. So you can see that I've moved it. And again, you could change, I could make this star specifically 4 inches wide. And if I check proportional, it will change it to be 4 inches both wide and tall. You could change, let's see, I didn't get, so if I go unproportional, I could get it to be 4 wide and tall. And then if I choose it again and check off proportional and make it, let's say 5, then it will make it 5 going both directions. So I think you understand the idea, what proportional does. So again, scaling X and Y. We could create a duplicate of this object just by clicking on duplicate. It gives me a second star. That's an exact copy of that. I could use mirror imaging. Now again, the star's kind of not going to show the mirror imaging so much because it's such a perfect shape that flipped either way it looks the same. However, now you see here we have, well, the rotation and outline width, but here you've got those parts of the object or the tool options that are specific to a star. So for example, it says it's got 6 rays. If I decrease that to 5, hit enter, you can see that it's now a 5-point star. And now that I've done that, I could probably use, for example, mirror Y, and you'll be able to see what it does, that it's flipping your object or your star to a new mirror image. So that's the idea. The other option here, the outline width. So right now it's set at 0.01, and it's just a running stitch outline. Now, if I go ahead and make this fatter, why don't I make it 2? See what it did? It made it, it's actually 2 inches, so it's a very, very fat border, perhaps too fat for the actual shape that we have. So maybe what we would want to do is try something like, a decimal 2. So 0.2 of an inch gives us column width that's nice and proportional to the shape. Now, if you want to make it fatter, go to 0.3. It'll make it fatter, so you can see what happens. That's how you can control the width of your satin serial outline. So that's a little bit more about creating a design from scratch. So we started right from the beginning, and then we simply chose the new graphic, which means we aren't basing it on any artwork. And I'm going to continue to show how to use these tools and whatnot, but what I think I should do is prepare to start another segment, and this time we'll introduce a graphic to show how you can create embroidery from a graphic. So let's continue with the quick start guide, and I'm going to go ahead and start another new design. And I can use the file drop down menu to choose new, but I also have new right here on my toolbar, so I'll say new. And it's going to take us through the same process that we just went through. The first step is going to be to select the fabric that you want to embroider on. And again, I could change this time. Instead of going with embroidery smooth, maybe I'll go with embroidery normal. And again, I have different choices, so whether it be cotton or denim, doesn't matter. And you can see that the appearance of your choices changes as you select the different types of denim. You could go with a pink denim or a dark burgundy denim or a blue denim, whatever you want. Now I'm going to say next. And this time, instead of starting just a plain new graphic, I'm going to choose to start one from a graphic, from a file, it says. And you need to click on this button here to bring up the options, the window to choose one. So when I click on that, it opens up a window, and this is a folder that was installed with the Artistic Crystal software, and it contains a whole bunch of different types of graphic files that you could convert into embroidery. Now, just to look at the types of files that we could import, it says files of type, and I'm looking at all supported types, but to see the list, we could go with AI, CMX, DXF, EPS, EMF, SVG, PLT, BMP, JPEG, GIF, WMF, TIF, PNG, and ICO. So there's many different styles of graphic files that we could work with. Now, like I said, these are ones that came installed with the software. And there's quite a large list, and these are sort of Windows things. So for example, it tells me where is the folder that I'm looking in, and if I click on this triangle, it's going to show me where in relationship to my computer that is. So under, well, this is my Trevor's documents. Under public and public documents, there's a folder called Creative Drawing Samples. So that's where I'm looking. And then you have, like I said, the type of files that you could choose. Now, once you've got that folder selected, you have different view options. So right now, if I look, we're looking at medium icons. I could look at large icons. Gives me larger pictures. If I go to something like details, it's going to give me no pictures, but more information about the designs. So these are different. These are things that happen through, I guess, the version of Windows that you use. But I just like to use something like medium icons. It allows me to see a lot of images at one time. And notice that I have a scroll bar here, and I can actually scroll through the graphics to see that there's literally dozens and dozens and probably hundreds. I didn't actually count all of the graphics, but there's lots of graphics that you could choose to work from. And the idea is these are clip art images that we could use to create embroidery from. Now, I guess if I click on an object like this, you'll see that it shows me a larger preview of it, and it tells me its size. Now, once I've found one that I want to work with, I say open. And so that file now becomes what's written in here. And so I've selected from a file, and when I say next, it goes ahead and starts a new design. The new design is based upon the fabric that we chose, and we have one more sort of window to go through. It's called the color reduction window. So right now it's showing us that our design has two colors, light blue and dark blue, or purple, I guess. If you wanted to, you could reduce the number of colors to be one color, and it would make everything the same color. So it's going to put blue and purple to all be in the color of blue. Anyway, that's a little bit about this process of doing it. So if I change it back to 2, then it gives me both the purple and the blue as two separate colors. And of course you can choose your palette, and I will talk again about modifying the thread palette down at the bottom, but like I'd said, there's many different brands of thread that could be chosen as your color palette. So for example, if you use Madeira Classic, you could choose that color palette, and the colors that are being quoted are actually Madeira brands of thread. So now I'm going to choose Finish. And that's it. our graphic has been placed on our screen. I'm going to just minimize my sequence manager and pull it off to the side, get it out of my way. And for example, now you'll notice I like to zoom in and zoom out a lot. And I'm doing that. It obviously would seem very mysterious to you because you can't see that I have a scroll on my mouse. And when I scroll up, it zooms in. And when I scroll out, it zooms away. And if I put my mouse over the center, it'll kind of zoom to where my mouse is. So as if I put my mouse over here, it kind of zooms out from that point. If I put my mouse over here, it zooms in on that point. Pull it out, put my mouse right here, it zooms in on that point. So that's kind of how it works. That's one way to zoom in. There's also the zoom tool that you could use to click and zoom in, or click and drag a box to zoom tool. And I will go over the zoom tool and whatnot, but probably the most common way of zooming, if you have a scroll mouse, is just to scroll down to zoom out and scroll up to zoom in. So you can see that the design was created, and all of the areas have been created with a run stitch outline and nothing filling those shapes in. So that was the graphic. Now what I want to do, for example, I'm going to use this as a crystal design, and it's quite small right now, so I'm going to use my select tool, my rectangle select tool, and if I click, I just select, for example, that one object or that one part of the design, and I could click on different parts to select them. But if I click, so I've just clicked off to let go, nothing is selected, and now what I'm going to do is click and drag to create a selection box. And now everything that's in my selection box was selected. So I selected all of the objects of the design. And I guess another alternative to selecting everything might be to go to the Edit drop-down menu and choose Select All, which is Control A. If I type Control A on my keyboard, it would select all. So I just chose the drop-down menu. If I click away to let go, and then on my keyboard, if I hold down Control and the letter A, it selects all. So there's many ways to select objects, and we'll talk more about selecting, but in general, that's what I've just done. Now that I have all these things selected, I'm going to first of all move their location. So notice when I mouse over the area of this design, when I see this little multi-directional arrow, that tells me I can easily move it. So I'm just going to bring it up here and move it kind of top and left. And then when I bring my mouse over top of a corner, see how I get that little two directions arrows? It says I could move it larger or smaller. So I'll make it larger. An alternative would be on a center handle, which gives me two directional arrows, which will stretch the image. So right now, I have it set as proportional. So even if I come on this one at the bottom, it's going to stretch it. So that overrides that proportional, as opposed to the corner, which will keep it within its proportions. And on the sides, I can stretch again. And another thing I could do in here is, if I wanted to, when I get close to this corner, when I go right on the over top of the corner, I get the resize option. But when I come close to the corner, that little white, I guess, half circle or moon kind of shows up around the corner, and a rotation option becomes available. And so just as an example, you can rotate your artwork to have a different orientation on your screen. And so that's a little bit, and I'm going to, again, I'll go in more detail about using the rectangular selection and making transformations of your objects, but in general, that's kind of how it works. You select it, and then you make it the size and orientation that you want. Now, when I'm happy with everything, I can just click to let go, and perhaps I'd like to fill in this area with crystals, so I'll select that area. I know that it currently has an outline in running stitch, and I could decide that I didn't want an outline, and I'll just choose none. So that got rid of the run line outline, and you can see if I look closely, it shows me the area where it could be filled in. We haven't selected any fill for the area yet, but what we did do is turn off the run stitch outline. Now again, I'll select the area. I'm going to change over to the fill tab, And I need to choose from either applique, net fill, array fill, or crystal fill. So I'll go ahead and choose crystal fill. And you can see that it adds crystals to my area. Now, I'm going to talk a lot more in detail about creating crystals, but just in general, I would have the ability to choose, this is my, once I've chose crystal fill in my object properties, all of these new tool options became available. So, for example, with crystal fill, I could choose the type of fill. Right now it's set for shape fit. And you have different options: rectangular, circular, contour, single line, shape fit, and line fit. And I'll go ahead and choose contour. And you can see that it's changed the way that the crystals are filling in the shape. Now you have, these are things that are going to use, we'll talk in detail about setting the offsets and the spacing of your crystals and how to use that. But just to get started, I thought I would overview some of the topics. So, for example, right now I'm set for the palette Swarovski round, but there are other palettes available that you could choose different styles of crystals. And then below that, I have the size of the crystals. So I have a list that ranges from, I guess, SS number 5, which are about 0.07 of an inch, and then I have larger ones. And so you can control the size of your crystals with this. Now this is going to relate to the actual type of crystal that you have specifically to work with. And it's going to be important that you choose the specific crystals that you will work with, because this is of course going to control our template that we're going to create to use for applying the crystals. So let's say that you knew you had an smaller size of crystal, maybe a 14 pp, something like this. So as soon as I choose that, my crystals change the size over here. Now you also have the colors. So once I selected the palette and the size, then it shows me the colors that are available. So if I wanted to, I could put rose colored crystals in there, or maybe I want to have something like whatever, purple crystals inside there. So it really, well, that doesn't really show well on my purple background or my denim background, so we can choose any kind of color, I guess, of crystal that you want. And when I click off, you can see the changes that I've made. So there are the crystals and the crystal patterns. So like I said, I will talk in more detail about controlling the crystal tool and all of the different choices for crystals, but I thought I would start by just showing in this segment how we could select a graphic, import that graphic onto our workspace, and transform the size and rotation of it, and then apply some style of embroidery, whether it be, you could put crystals in all of these shapes if you wanted to. So in here, this is something I could show you. Notice that the purple is actually made up of several pieces. There's 1, 2, 3 different selections of purple that I could select. If you wanted to select them all, well, you could have the selection tool. You could do a lasso selection, I guess, and then you would need to kind of draw around that shape that you wanted to select, and when you get them all drawn, it selects them all. Another way to do that, if I just click to let go of all that, would be to come down into your color palette. And notice here that I have purple as one of my choices. And if I right click over top of the purple, first of all, I could set purple as my default pen color or as my default fill color. But what I wanted to do this time was say to select by fill color or pen color. So I know that those purple areas are set to have a purple fill. So if I say select by fill color, and I've clicked on purple, I'm going to start over. If I right click over the color purple and then choose select by fill color, it selects all of the objects within our design that have the color purple as their fill. You see that? So there's more than one way to select those objects. Now, again, I could choose to go ahead and maybe I want to put, instead of a running stitch outline, maybe I'd like to outline those shapes with crystals. And so I could choose crystals for the outline. And when I do that, the same sort of options come up about the size of the crystal. So let's say we had a nice small 11 pp crystal, and you wanted to put it into color, nice bright ruby, pink or something like that. Click off, zoom in, and so you can see here that it's outlined my shapes with those little crystals. Okay, so in general, that's how you can create an embroidery design from a graphic and then apply things like crystal stitching to that. And now what I'll do is just prepare to come back and do the same sort of principle from an actual existing embroidery design. Okay, so let's continue with our Quickstart guide for artistic crystal software. And so what I'm going to do is this time I'm going to click New once again. And the same sort of steps are followed. So we can select a style of fabric, and maybe I'll try something different, like microfiber. And then I would choose a color, so I don't know, go with the light purple, whatever. And then choose Next. Now, this time I said I would try from embroidery. And when I choose from embroidery, and again I come over to this little button on the right, it opens up a window similar to the previous segment where we looked at graphics, except for this time we're looking at embroidery designs. These are embroidery designs that were installed again in the same folder as last time under the public, Trevor, or my computer, my public documents, and the creative drawing samples. Now, the samples are in this .ngs format, but you have the ability, if I look at the list, to open any of these different embroidery files. So you'll see there's a very large list, including commercial formats like SWF or Tajima, all sorts of domestic formats, whether it be Janome or Husqvarna or Brother or Pfaff. So there's certainly a large list of styles or formats that you could choose from. Now I'll just leave it on all supported types. And so these are the graphics or the embroidery designs that came installed with the software. Now I just simply select this simple design with some hearts and an arrow going through them and say Open. And say Next. And again you get to this color reduction window. It basically senses all of the colors that are in the design, and if you wanted to, you could reduce them. So for example, if you wanted all of the yellow to be sewn in the same yellow, I could click on one of the yellows, click and drag and bring it up over top of the other yellow. And so I'm going to reduce the two. Now it'll only be 4 colors, and these 2 colors of yellow will be combined into the same mustard color. So that's just an idea of how you can reduce your number of colors. Now I'll say Finish. And it opens up our embroidery design onto our screen. And similarly to the graphics, if I, for example, say Control A, I can select all of these embroidery elements and move them on my screen. And if I wanted to, I could resize the embroidery. And it actually will calculate all new stitches. So in other words, it will maintain my sort of stitch densities for this object or this embroidery design. Okay, so here we have an embroidery design, and maybe I'll just move my sequence manager over here and out of my way. I'm going to zoom in a little more closely, and let's just say, for example, I selected this red fill area here, and you can see that it's red fill that I've selected. Now, if I come over to my object properties, what I have the ability is to convert that red embroidery fill to, let's say, a crystal fill. And so it fills in that specific area with crystals. And then, as always, you have the ability to choose the size of the crystals, so you can get smaller ones or bigger ones. You can choose the palette, and you can choose your color of your crystals. So if you want to choose, I guess, blue, whatever, it fills them in. Now, notice here, because I've taken an area that was filled with embroidery and it's got satin borders around it, that some of my crystals are starting to be, I guess, covered by the embroidery, and that's not going to be so ideal. So we have some different ways to compensate for that, and one of them is the style of the way the crystals are fit in, and right now it's called shape fit, and they basically try to fit around my shape. I could choose contour, as another option, or I could choose circular, give me different styles of patterns. The ways that the crystals are applied over this shape. Now, the other main tool that we could use to kind of help with this is the offset option here. So if I click on offset, it turns it on. And if I put in here a positive number, it will make my crystals go outside of the shape. If I put in a negative number, it will make them come inside of the shape. So if I type in, for example, a -3 and hit enter, you can see here that it's moved all of the crystals inside of that shape. And so I was able to fill those crystals in and have them offset to not touch that inside shape like that. And let's see, I also have the ability to change the style. So when you find the sort of most appropriate combination of style or fill pattern and offset and spacing, then you would be happy. So that's the concept, that we would be able to come into a design and select areas, and you can even modify the areas. For example, for this yellow heart here, if I wanted to, I can select it, and click and drag to move it out of that shape. And I could do any number of things, I guess. We could fill that in with crystals. We could add a satin border to it. So basically, I could even just remove parts of a design. So you have a lot of editing capabilities to Embroidery Designs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through all of the different tools. But in general, I just wanted to kind of demonstrate the concept that you could open up an embroidery design, select parts of that embroidery design, and fill them in with crystals, or even outline them with crystals. So those are the types of, I guess, choices that you have. So you can see here that I filled my area in with yellow. Well, maybe I'll take the fill off, and so I just left the purple crystals that go around that little piece of the heart that I had removed from the design. So you can see here that I have the ability with these tools to select areas and choose their type of fill and their type of outline. So that's creating, modifying, I guess, embroidery designs and modifying graphics to have crystal fills and different styles of outlines. But we also have the ability to import graphics from your scanner or your webcam. And so I think I'll just come back and maybe we'll take a look at something like using the scanner. Okay, so continuing along with our quick start guide, and this time what I wanted to do was to start a new design. And this time we're going to work from an image that we will scan from my scanner. And I don't plan to do the webcam option during the video, but I think you'll find that it follows the very similar steps to using the scanner as long as you have a webcam attached to your computer. So I'm going to choose Get Image from Scanner and choose Next. Now it comes up with my little, this is actually a scanner interface that comes with the Artistic Crystal software. But what it does is it actually connects to the scanner that I have connected to my computer. And so I guess the first thing that you would need to do is choose Preview to be able to see what the image that's on the glass of the scanner is. So I made a little, I just took a marker and sketched off my first initial T for Trevor, just to demonstrate how I could scan in a graphic and then create embroidery from it. So we're just waiting while it previews the page that I put on the scanner. And so it just takes a moment. And so now we can see there is the graphic that I've got. Now, if I want to, I can make a selection of an area by just clicking and dragging. So I found a spot and I click and drag to select an area that I'd like to scan. And you have the ability to scan it as a color image, as a grayscale, or a black and white image. I'm going to go ahead and choose black and white. Mine's just a felt marker on a piece of paper. And you can choose your quality of your scan, sort of low, medium, and high. You have the brightness and contrast options. It's going to scan it at 100% or the actual size, and it tells me the size that is. Now, if you choose Advanced Scan, then that's going to actually change from using the scanner interface that comes with the Artistic Crystal software to the scanner interface that would have come with your scanner. So if you prefer to use your scanner, you can also use your own scanner interface by clicking on this button here, and it would bring up some kind of I have a Canon scanner, and it'll bring up my little Cano scan interface. So I'll just wait for that. You can see, so it's called Scan Gear, and so this may not be the same for you that it is for me, because your scanner would have its own different scanner interface. Now I'm just going to cancel and come back to this image scan option here from the Artistic Crystal. So you can see I've selected an area, chose black and white, high quality scan, and I simply need to say scan to start actually capturing the image of this letter T that I'd created. So that'll take a moment for the scanner to go over the image and capture what you've got. So we'll wait for that to come up. Now, when it's finished, it asks me to save the image, and it's brought up the public documents and the creative drawing samples, and the only difference is here I actually created my own folder called Trevor's Designs, and if I didn't want that, I guess we could simply go back to the creative drawing samples. So this is sort of the default folder that came up, and I simply used new folder and created my own folder for my own designs that I'm going to create. So I've created my own folder, and from within that folder I'm just going to save this as, I guess, T dash graphic. I don't know, you can give it any name you want. I'm going to call it the T dash graphic, and it's going to be in JPEG format, and I'll choose save. Now, one more step that we get to choose, and it's either to open our graphic as a backdrop, which means the software will do nothing but put the image on my screen, and then it allows me to use my own tools to create the embroidery based upon a backdrop, or I could have the software trace the graphic and convert it into sort of vectorized lines. So I'm just gonna, this is the simplest option, choosing as a backdrop, and say finish. So it'll go ahead and put that graphic onto my screen. Now, if I wanted to change the size of it, I don't do it in the same way as embroidery, where you might choose a selection tool and try and select this graphic, and you'll notice that it's simply not selectable. And if you want to change your backdrop, what you need to do is go to View, and then find the option for backdrop, and then the options here. Well, first of all, you have the ability to put your backdrop below your embroidery, above your embroidery, make it kind of faded or wash it out, hide it so it's not viewable, but you also have the ability to change the properties of the backdrop. So if I choose that, I get this little window that comes up, and I have those same options about below the embroidery, washed out above. I could straighten the graphic if I felt that it wasn't straight, and I also have the ability to change the size or the scale. So if I want to make it bigger or smaller, then I can do that here as well. So that's your backdrop properties. Now I'm going to close that. And just to show, these are the tools that I have. So I'm going to choose under I have the freehand tool, I've got the Bezier shape tool, and I've got the outline tool. And I'll be showing how to use each of these tools again, but I'll just choose the outline tool for now. And I'm going to zoom in. So remember, this is just a backdrop. There's nothing here. I need to create the shape. I need to create the embroidery object so that I can fill this in with crystals or outline it with crystals or whatever I would like to do with this letter T that I'd made. So I'm going to go ahead and digitize this shape. And I'm going to zoom in, and I'll start maybe right here. So I click to put a point down, and notice that I get like a little sort of broken line that's going to follow my mouse. And what you'll see, I'm just zoom out a little bit, is if I click, I can click and it curves with my line. See what it's doing? I'm not following my artwork here. Now I'm going to hit backspace to let go of those points. I don't want them. So the idea is if I click, I get a curved line. So I should be able to just click, and it's going to follow that curve. Now if I want here, if I just click around the corner, see what happens? I end up with a really kind of wowed out corner. And that's not what we want, so I'm going to hit the backspace tool again, let go of those points. So to get a perfect corner, when I use the outline tool, because this is specific to the outline tool, I hold my shift key down. And then when I click on the corner, it allows me to have that perfectly right turn, or a sharp corner. Now I can click and move along my line, and then when I get here, again, hold the shift key down to get a corner. Now you also have the ability, it kind of follows the curves as I put them, but if I click, I'll just show this outside of my artwork, click and drag, I can have more influence over the shape of it by these little handles that I'm clicking and dragging to create. So you can see how you can control the line that's coming next with those little handles. Now I'll hit again backspace to let go of that. So the idea is I could click and drag, and that would give me even more control over the shape of my line. And as I move my mouse off of my screen, it kind of nudges the screen for me. I'll hold shift down there, click, and then move over my screen, and here I need to hold shift, and then I come up here. So I can, with this outline tool, it kind of makes everything a curved line, and if I want a straight line, I hold the shift key down. So everything just following along my artwork, everything kind of curves along, and when I get to a corner, I hold shift, and that gives me the corner point. So it's really very easy to use this tool to follow the artwork and create this shape. So again, holding shift down for the corner, and then coming along here. Now when it reaches the end, notice that it wants to, when I connect it, it wants to sort of close the shape, and it wants to close it with a curve. If I hold shift down, it lets me close it on a corner. There. So I created a shape. I created an object that was based upon the graphic that I scanned. And I'll go ahead and select that now, and it comes up kind of by default with a light blue fill, but it's empty, nothing in it, and I could fill it in with crystals if I wanted to. And then I also have the pen option where I could create a crystal outline if I wanted to. So maybe I'll choose a different color for my crystal outline from my crystal fill, and then you can see the results. So here we've got my shape that I digitized. I drew the shape with the tool, and then I used the crystals to fill it in and outline it. So that's a little bit more about using your scanner. And what I'm going to do now is just sort of finalize the Quickstart guide, and then I'll prepare to come back with more detailed looks at the different tools of the program. But what I wanted to do just before I kind of completed was, for example, we've created several things during this Quickstart guide. Certainly this T is one of them. Remember I showed you this little toolbar here. I can click on that to see all of the different designs that we had created throughout this Quickstart guide. I didn't close any of them. And so if I wanted to save those, then I would need to do exactly that, save the designs. So for example, with the T that I just created, if I come up to here and choose File and then choose Save, it by default wants to save it as a draw file. And draw files are the important file for you using the creative drawing software. That's your work. And I could call this, T-crystals. T-crystals. You can call it any name you want. Saving it as a draw file as my original file is the most important. So I always save the draw file, and if I need to make any modifications to the design, I come back to the draw file. Now, chances are your embroidery machine does not sew out draw files, and if you wanted to stitch this out, let's say on a Janome embroidery machine, then you would need to choose File and Save As, and then you could change from the draw format and save it as a Janome Jeff design, for example. And so I'll save tcrystals.jeff and choose Save. It says the design contains no stitches, but that's because I've only created crystals, so I guess it's not maybe as appropriate. You see, when you save an embroidery design, it means you're going to take it to the embroidery machine. Let's just create some embroidery. So for example, I'm going to select the T again, and I'm going to go to the outline. Instead of having a crystal outline, we'll go with a satin stitch outline. This will make a little bit more sense. So here we've got crystal fill with a satin stitch outline. And so to actually be able to create this embroidery design and sew it and create it, you would need to sew with your embroidery machine the satin outline, and you would also need to use your cutting machine to create the template for placing your crystals. And so it's sort of two different steps. So to save it for the embroidery machine, File, Save As, and then we can choose the different format like Janome Jeff format. So I'll select the Jeff format and save tcrystals.jeff and save. Okay, and it asks me to sort of choose my machine. So if you had a 350E or just Janome generic, those are the two options, and you say OK. So it says it successfully saved my design, 2200 stitches. Now, if I wanted to create the crystal portion of this, I would need to do File and Export. And when you look at Export, you have several options. So we have to Editor, and that will actually take us over to the other piece of software that comes with the artistic crystal software called Wings Modular. And I'll have a whole other section on the video to talk about Wings Modular and the type of editing that you could do to embroidery designs using Wings, the basic module for Wings software. In this case, we would want to create crystals, so we would save it to the crystals or to our cutting machines. You also have the ability to create this as an SVG file or as an image, like as a JPEG image. Now, if I choose to crystal cutters, then a little interface comes up and it gives me, well, first of all, you have that sort of default, like if I just wanted to save it into my computer. But if you wanted to save it for a specific cutting machine, you can choose from the list of different cutting machines that you may have. So you choose the machine, and then you have the different types of controls for saving this to that cutting machine. So you've got the ability to save the crystals. If there were other elements in this artwork, like for example, if there was outlines or appliques, I could have those sent to the cutting machine as well. The number of passes that you can determine. You can choose the speed, a cutting offset, blade pressure. So these are things that are going to be specific depending on which machine that you're using. But in general, we would need to send this design to our cutting machine, and the cutting machine would then create the template for use to apply the crystals to your embroidery design. So that's a little bit more about saving your designs. Once you've created the designs, then you need to save them. And you can see now that I've saved this as t-crystals.draw. It shows that name in the toolbar here. So that's going to conclude our Quickstart guide to using the artistic crystal software, and certainly there's lots more for us to learn, and so you may want to review the individual video clips where I will describe different tools and features of the software with more detail.